Unfortunately, we seem to have lost a generation of pastors to replace the older generation. If you look at any statistics that are out there, doesn't matter, mainline denomination, evangelicalism, anything, the amount of guys that are coming up that are younger is not enough to replace all those that need to retire or getting ready to retire. I believe your average pastor in the United States is currently roughly 57 years of age, and 25% of them want to retire within the next 5 years. And there seems to be not a lot of younger guys coming up. One, Only 1 in 7 pastors are under the age of 40. And that's an issue. That's a problem. And so, has God stopped calling men to the ministry? I don't believe so, but I believe there's some hindrances. There's some things that are stopping people. And I just want to be an encouragement to you today. If you're a younger person and you've thought that maybe the Lord is calling you to the ministry and you weren't sure how that would work, I want you to consider the idea of being a bivocational or a co-vocational pastor. And I genuinely believe that the future for a lot of pastors, that's going to be how it's going to need to be done. And so I want to give you 7 pros and 5 cons of being a bivocational pastor. And this is something that is near and dear to my heart because that's what I am. I pastor a small church in the Midwest. We're in a small town. Not a lot of people moving in, not a lot of people moving out. In fact, our town shrunk in size a little bit in the last decade. Not a whole lot, but a little bit. And, we're only in a town of less than 10,000 people. We can only talk to the same people so many times. And so for me, I own a small business as well as pastor a small church. So let's jump right in and talk about 7 pros of being a bivocational pastor. So, number 1, freedom. You are automatically going to be more financially secure. Good pastors still preach the truth, but they are tempted at times to take it easy, maybe, or to skip on some things because the reality is their paycheck does revolve around not getting fired as the pastor. It's a weird thing being a pastor. You are the shepherd, you're the leader of the church, but if they don't like the way they're being led, they can either walk out the door or they can vote you out the door, one of the two. And so having a secondary source of income, not relying solely on the church for your income, brings an amazing amount of freedom because the pressure to compromise or to not preach the whole counsel of God really goes down dramatically. Not to say there's still not pressures to do that, but it's very freeing knowing that your income isn't relying solely on the church. And if the church all gets mad at you and decides they're going to vote you out tonight, you're still going to have an income next week. Okay, so number 1, freedom. Number two, number true. How about number 2? Let's try that again. Number 2, greater possibility of taking care of your family financially. Now, you'll see again, this is a financial benefit, right? So you're going to have more income and you're going to be able to set aside some income for retirement. And let's be honest, a lot of the generation that was ahead of me, I'm in the, over 40 age now, but a lot of the generation that was older than I am, they didn't set anything aside for their future. In fact, a lot of them were talked out of even doing like the Social Security and all that kind of thing. So you have guys that are hanging on, being pastors that really they want to retire and they should have retired a long time ago, and they end up taking the church downhill as they age because they have no other options. And so, setting aside for retirement as a pastor, I believe, is really, really important so that you can step aside when that time comes and when you need to, right? When you need to bring in the next guy. And I'd actually probably argue that one of the reasons we have a shortage of pastors in, say, that 30 to 45 bracket is because a lot of the older guys, when they should have stepped aside and let that generation come in, they just couldn't or they wouldn't, right? And so, setting aside for retirement is very important. And if you're bivocational, you have a lot more opportunity to be able to set some funds aside for your retirement. So, number 3, this is not a financial one, but keeps you grounded in the real world, and it helps you understand what real people are going through. I have met many pastors that have never really worked a real job, maybe other than a couple years as a single guy while they're going through Bible college, but they've never worked out in, like, I hate to say it, but the real world. And they really don't understand what their people are going through. They don't understand what it's like to work a 10 or 12-hour shift and come to church and show up on a Wednesday night and you're tired and, why are you falling asleep? Well, the guy just got done working, 10 hours and he had to commute for 30 minutes to work and then he had to drive 30 minutes to church and, they're tired. There's a lot of things that are going on out there. And it really astounds me talking to pastors sometimes. It's very obvious the guys that have never been out in the real world and have never lived a normal life, so to speak. And being bivocational is going to force you to spend more time around just average people that are out there. You're going to be tired. You're going to be working. You're going to be doing things. It's going to keep you out in your community, and so it keeps you grounded with reality. And I think this is something that is greatly missing among a lot of pastors. It's also along those lines. Number four, it's going to help you build relationships in your community because you're actually out working in your community. I own a business. My business operates in the same town sometimes where I'm a pastor at. People know that I'm the pastor of the church down the road. And it helps build relationships. It helps build things. It keeps me honest as a business owner because I want to be a good testimony for Christ. And, it's just, it helps the community to realize that you're a real person. And it opens a lot of doors that you might not otherwise have because you're out there actually living in and working in the community that you are a part of. So that's number four. Number five, I would say that it helps free up funds for the church. And I just going back to our church, the building that when I came in to be pastor, the building hadn't really been maintained in a decade. There's a lot of work. There's a lot of things that needed to be brought up to speed. And so by me not requiring a full blown salary, the church does pay me, and I think a church should pay their pastor as much as they can. But I'm not demanding this high salary. I'm taking a fair salary uh, within that's easily within the means of the church to provide and still leave enough funds to be able to work on repairing the facilities, to spend a significant amount of funds on outreach. You could use money for missions, and maybe if your church was a little bit larger and you needed some staff, you could bring on some part-time staff that you might not be able to afford to do if you are taking all of the funds because you are on full time, where you might be able to bring on another part time guy, not just to have a staff, but to, I would say, to bring up the next generation, to bring a younger person on that you can help them be bivocational and you can train them and teach them in the ministry so that they can go out and take a church or maybe replace you as you get a little bit older. And so, uh, being bi being vi- good night. I can't. I'm not going to edit that out. Being bivocational has a lot of financial benefits, not just to the pastor, but also to the church, and in not sucking up all the funds, so that you can have other things that you need to take care of. The money will be there, right? And so that's number four. Number six. I'm sorry, that was number five. Number six. It forces you to become a better delegator in bringing people into the work. Especially for, I take my business. I'm our business is very, what's the word I'm looking for? Seasonal. We work about 7, maybe 8 months out of the year. We have 4 months out of the year where we're resting, recovering, and we're not necessarily working. We're doing paperwork, maybe some maintenance on some equipment. But during those 7, 8 months, we're go, 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 go. By the end of last season, I was physically wiped out, mentally wiped out, right? it and what that does is it does not allow me to be a dictator, so to speak. It doesn't allow me to take all of the weight upon my shoulders. It forces me to delegate. And honestly, that's a church needs to do that. That's part of training your people. That's part of training the next generation to bring them along. You need to be able to let things go and train other people to do the work as well. And so when you're bivocational, that's going to force you to do that. It's not going to allow you to just carry the whole burden on yourself. And it's really something you shouldn't be doing, anyways. And number seven, as far as pros go, it forces you to manage your time better. Sermon prep, dealing with issues, making sure that you're spending time with God and your family. You got to prioritize these things, right? And being bivocational is going to and being bivocational is going to force you to do that. It's not going to allow you to just, well, I can put that off till tomorrow, or I can do that. Whatever. No, like my schedule is laid out. As far as my sermon prep goes, like I know starting Tuesday, I'm go, 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 go. And I know where I'm doing every night to get everything ready, and I'm planning things out. And you know what? I can always do better at that. Everybody can always do better. But it's going to force you to manage your time better. And if you manage your time better, you get a lot more accomplished. And so that's one of the pros that I would consider. Now, let's talk about 5 cons here because, there are some issues with this. It's going to limit how much time you have for the church. It just is. Now, again, we're in a small town. There's only so much, we can do in a small town before people start to get tired of you. We're trying to build relationships, trying to get to know people, trying to spend time with the people in our church as much as possible when needed, hospital visits, all that kind of stuff, right? But it is going to limit how much time you do have. That is just a factor. It's going to stop you from maybe going to as many conferences or pastors' meetings. I didn't go to any last year. As far as conferences go, went to a couple pastors' meetings. There was actually a couple that were closer to me that I wanted to go to. We were out working. Just it was what it was. So that's okay, but that might be a con, especially because a lot of pastors, they don't have a lot of friends. But on the other hand, being bivocational, you're going to have a lot of other people that you're going to interact with. So, but that is a con, right? Number 3, feelings of failure or inadequacy, especially when around full-time pastors. There can just be this feeling or this look down upon, especially, and some guys do. They shouldn't, but they look down upon the guy that's working a job, and it's like, I don't know why, because a lot of them, their wives are actually working an outside job and they're subsidizing them anyways. If we're truthful, that actually happens more often than we realize. So, but it can lead to some feelings of inadequacy or like you're failing, and that's just not the case. Don't let that get to you. That's just not reality. But that is one of the cons. Number 4, it can lead to burnout if not managed properly. And again, I said, we have a seasonal business. We go, go, go. We work a lot of hours. Was times when I'd get done preaching on Sunday evening, and I go out work 6-7 hours. Might work till 3-4 o'clock in the morning, doing a project, doing a job that had to be done. And just because that was the nature of our business, and so it can be very tiring, which means you have to take time to rest. You got to take time to recover, and you can't be afraid to take time off. You can't be afraid to take a vacation. And when we were done with our season, I took my family out for 2 weeks and we just left town and went on our annual family vacation, right? And so it can lead to burnout if it's not managed properly, but it can definitely be managed. You just have to make sure that you're doing that. Number 5, people may think you are ignoring them or things around the church, especially if you are new and the previous person wasn't bivocational. In my case, I came in for and replaced a guy that was in his 80s. He was not bivocational, but he had Social Security and he had the salary that the church was paying him, and he had been there for so long. His house was paid off, and um, so he was getting multiple streams of income coming in, but he wasn't working another job, if that makes any sense. And so, there was a few times that some of the older people were like, "Well, why aren't we doing this and why aren't we doing that?" I was like, "Well, I got to go earn an income because what the church is paying me is not enough for me to feed my family on, and my family's not going to starve for me to be the pastor here. God didn't call me to mistreat my family." And so, you may have to do some educating, some have some discussions with people again, especially if the previous pastor was not bivocational. Now, with that being said, I believe that there's more pros than there are cons. The cons aren't really that big; they're easily manageable. And the reality is, we need some pastors. And so, younger man, even older man, if you maybe have ever felt like the Lord is calling you to serve, to preach, to be a pastor, uh, I would cons- I would urge you to pray about that. Talk with your wife about that. Talk with your pastor about it. There is a huge need for pastors to come and replace the ones that are dying and that are retiring. And there's hundreds of churches all throughout this country that don't have a pastor right now. And, they need someone. And so I'd urge you to consider that, to pray about it, and maybe the Lord will give you that desire. But don't be afraid of being bivocational. I enjoy it. If the Lord never lets me go full time, that's okay. I also have, I love to run businesses. I was a business guy and I was in management for some large corporations. I enjoy that. And so the Lord giving me the opportunity is how I look at it to do both. I get to serve his church, and then I also get to uh, be in the business world that I also enjoy. And God has allowed me to have the best of both worlds. It's not a detriment. And so I would encourage you to seriously consider and pray about that. And I'm going to say one more thing. If you've made it this far, if you are a church member that is in need of a pastor, You really need to take a look at your requirements. And there's a lot of churches out there that just have, they're stuck in the 1960s. They think that you're going to bring a young man on with a family and pay him $30,000 a year. I mean, I've literally seen these ads and they want a full time pastor. That is not right. That man needs to be able to take care of his family. And so, churches, if you're looking for a pastor, you need to seriously sit down, look at the mirror, and ask, what can we honestly pay a pastor? And what are our expectations of that? And are our expectations realistic? I might do a whole nother video on that later. So I'm going to stop right there. If you've enjoyed the content, I hope this was a blessing to you. But if you've enjoyed the content, please hit like, subscribe, share with someone that you think it might help. And again, if you feel like the Lord is maybe leading you to ministry, don't be afraid of bivocational ministry. And if I can be a help to you in any way, I would certainly be willing to do that. I think I'm going to do another video because I've had some younger men ask me for some tips on how to deal with being in bivocational ministry. And I think I'm going to do a video on the advice that I gave him. So till next time, y'all take care, and we'll see you around.